Hi, I'm Mark Sleboda, and this is The Real Politik. While the collective West is in their own twisted version of an anti-Russian cultural revolution, rabidly vilifying and demonizing Russia to an extent never even dreamt of in the first Cold War, with Russian citizens being banned from international sporting and music events held in the West for the crime of being Russian. The attempt to cancel Russian culture to the extent that Russian composers and literature are being censored out of university curriculums and performances. And absurdly enough, even Russian breed cats and trees being excluded from competitions, and Russian salad dressing, which has nothing at all to do with Russia, being renamed. Something very, very different from this is going on in Africa and much of the rest of the global south. To the shock, dismay, and outrage of the West, Africans and people elsewhere in the global south are literally raising up the Russian flag in protest. The phenomenon has been reported in the Central African Republic, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Ethiopia, as well as Haiti in the Caribbean, and even in the middle of Europe, in Serbia. But it's far more than just raising the Russian flag. African states and the rest of the global south have refused to implement Western sanctions against Russia, despite intense Western pressure. What's more, despite Western sanctions weaponizing their control of the global financial and banking infrastructure, making transactions with Russia extremely difficult, trade with Africa is booming in grain, fertilizer, energy and arms deals, and more. According to Dr. Mustafa Mehta, a fellow at the Johannesburg-based think tank Media Review Network, many countries across Africa are signing deals with Russia. It's for the simple reason that Russia, like China, does not interfere in the affairs of its clients and treats them as equal and sovereign partners. The Ugandan president, Yoweri Museveni, declared, "We want to trade with Russia. We don't want to fight other people's enemies." Russia has gone another step further to win the hearts and minds of the people of Africa and donated enormous quantities of grain and fertilizer to needy African states for free. Conversely, African states have been giving the Kiev regime in Ukraine's President Zelensky the cold shoulder, with only 4 out of 55 African Union leaders attending a video conference with Zelensky pushed by the West in June. Africans in Ethiopia and several other African states actually massed in large queues outside Russian embassies immediately after the Russian intervention was launched, after hearing false rumors that Russia was signing up African volunteers to fight in Ukraine. Several African states, including the Central African Republic, Mali, Madagascar, Sudan, and Mozambique, have all turned to the Russian PMC Wagner for security services, often sending packing Western troops, particularly the former colonial power France, in the process. Macron has blamed French troops being kicked out of their former colony Mali on a predatory Russian influence project and disinformation. But it seemed that the government of Mali was far more concerned with the perniciousness of French influence operations and also banned French NGOs. Across the board, Western media and governments are screaming in increasingly hysterical alarm about growing Russian influence in Africa, even as their own is waning. The reason for all this is simple. African states remember well the depredations of their former European colonial masters and the support that the USSR gave them in assisting their struggles to escape from that Western colonial yoke. And today, Russia, as the Soviet Union's geopolitical heir, is once again assuming the same role and helping them escape from the West's neo-colonial grip. They aren't stupid. They know how the current regime in Kiev seized power in an openly West-backed putsch, launched a bloody civil war to subjugate its own people in the east, to the seizure of power in Kiev, and made Ukraine into a complete client state of the West. Africans just don't buy the Western narrative about the conflict being some Ukrainian anti-colonialist struggle against Russia, but see it properly as a Western-provoked proxy war on Russia. Ordinary Africans and other people in the global south are raising the Russian tricolor high because they increasingly see Russia as standing up to the West in a way they often lack the power to do. They see the Russian flag as a symbol of defiance and resistance against US-led Western global hegemony, and as a symbol of hope for a multipolar world. This is a heavy burden for Russia to bear, raising the stakes of the conflict with NATO in Ukraine beyond merely Russia's own parochial national and security interests. Many around the rest of the world are now pinning their geopolitical hopes and prayers on a Russian victory over the West.
More than 100 people participated on Saturday in Bangui, the capital of the Central African Republic, CAR, in support of Russia's offensive against Ukraine. The demonstrators gathered at the foot of a statue inaugurated in late 2021 by President Faustin Archange Touadéra, representing Russian fighters protecting a woman and her children. We recognize a friend in suffering. When we were in crisis, it was Russia that came to our rescue to liberate the country. We saw France, which was there but did nothing, and France continues to bully us. We have to tell certain truths today. Russia is coming to liberate us. Now we are free, and we must support Russia at all costs until our last breath. Russia came to our country in the moment of crisis. Our country has suffered. Our country has been mistreated by the rebels, and that is why we came to support Russia. Many waved Russian and Central African flags in the heart of the capital near the university. On Wednesday, the CAR abstained during a vote at the United Nations General Assembly of a text that demanded that Russia immediately cease the use of force against Ukraine.
Ismail Sawadogo, who runs a shop in Ouagadougou's suburbs, supports Russian intervention.
Russia has weapons and also a vision that will help Africa. That's why we want them to commit to help us in our fight. What Russia is doing in Mali is good, and we know that will be okay. Yes, security in Mali has improved.
Asked where he got his Russian flag and clothes in Russian colours, he said he bought the cloth and had a tailor make them. Meanwhile, people like Pascal Dima are cashing in. He crisscrosses Ouagadougou on his motorcycle, selling Russian flags to protesters.
I sell the flags at 1,000 francs each. People ask for them a lot. I have 350 flags that I share with a friend to sell. Today, this is the only one I have left, so I kept it for myself. I get them from a tailor for 800 francs each.